as I worked to sort of overcome my limiting self-beliefs and overcome my fears, a big component of that was me saying, I'm going to do this, for me. Like, I'm going to take this on. I'm going to meet this challenge head on. No more excuses, no more bullshit, no more fear. And when I say no more fear, I just mean, yes, all the fear, and I'm going to go forward anyway, right? The fear is always there, but it's about pushing through it. It's not about getting rid of fear. But, that was a big component, was me like owning it for myself and being like, I'm going to figure out how to do this and I'm going to do whatever it takes. And so it became a solo thing, and it became kind of a self-empowerment thing. In a healthy way, I think, and in a really important way. It was like, I'm going to do everything that I have to do to blossom as a creator and to put myself out there and to try to, actually rise to the level of my potential and push myself. And I do think there's a lot of value that comes from going through sort of like a lonely season like that, where you're like putting it all on your back and you're taking it on. At least for me, I think that was a really important phase. And it was like, I was figuring it all out. And it felt like, nobody's going to care about this as much as me. And that was definitely true then because, I didn't have anything yet. Like, I hadn't established anything really for myself yet. So it was like, I have to figure out how I'm going to get these videos filmed. I have to edit these videos myself. I have to figure out how to make a thumbnail and, using different little like design apps on my phone to like overlay text over a thumbnail. And, I'm going to write this description. I'm going to do every single piece of what it took to like get my art out there. I was taking that on myself, and that was a lot of work, and I learned so much from that process, and I really grew a lot through that process, and it became sort of like a comfortable space for me in a strange way to sort of like just do everything myself. But I think what's interesting is it goes from this thing that you're doing out of necessity, like you have to do everything by yourself because, you don't have anything yet, right? So like to get your foot in the door, like to make your first statement, you have to own that, right? There's an element of that. It shifts from being this thing that you're doing out of necessity to then being this comfort zone, like now I'm comfortable creating by myself and sort of taking it all on myself. And what I have to realize also about myself, and what I've been coming to realize more and more, is that I have a certain fear around collaborating with other people. I have insecurities around collaborating with other people. And it's funny to say this because, I'm the guy that goes out there on the street and approaches strangers and asks them to throw me words for a freestyle, which feels like a very crazy extroverted thing to do. But in reality, I think I'm more of an introvert than an extrovert, without, really being an expert on the science behind those sort of classifications. But I am somebody who enjoys spending time alone. I am somebody who enjoys reading. I do, like I said, I enjoy creating sort of in a solo space. I've never really liked writing my rhymes in a room with other people like around. I've always been like, let me get to where I'm by myself and then I'll write my rhymes. So, I'm sort of introverted, and there's always been this sort of, I think, insecurity around collaborating with other people. And I'm realizing that I think a lot of that comes to the fact that when I'm just creating solo by myself, whether the art is successful or a total failure, it's all on me. And I really like that. It's really comforting to know that even if whatever I put out, it just totally tanks and nobody likes it, it's fine because I only have myself to hold accountable for that, and nobody else has to suffer from that in any way except for me. And so that feels comforting. And it's funny to think that, like, I think a lot of my insecurities around collaborating with other people have been based around this idea that, like, I don't want to let the team down. And I think back to when I was a kid, I never had a natural talent for sports. I did sports because all the other, a lot of my friends did it. And, it's just something you get signed up for to do as a kid. But it was always forced for me. I didn't have that natural spark for it. I'm sure I could have practiced really hard and made it the priority and gotten somewhat better at it, but it didn't come naturally to me like it did for a lot of other kids. And, I was always afraid of the ball, like playing soccer as a kid or playing basketball. Not because I was actually afraid of the ball, obviously, but because I was afraid of not being able to make the play. I was afraid of letting the team down. Like, I didn't want to have the power, because if I had the ball and I had the power to make the play, I also had the power to, figuratively speaking, drop the ball, right? And so I didn't want to have that responsibility, because for me, not being naturally talented as an athlete, it felt much more likely that I was going to drop the ball than actually make the play, right? And so there was this sort of anxiety around letting other people down. When I discovered music and when I started playing the violin when I was 7, I was like, this is amazing, because it's just me against me. There's nobody that I can let down other than myself. It's like either I practice and get better at the violin, or I don't, and I don't improve, and nobody else has to suffer because of that. I mean, of course, eventually, like, my dad would have been like, I'm not going to pay for these lessons anymore. But there's no team to let down. It was like a solo endeavor. And so I feel similarly now in the space that I find myself in as a creator, where I've gotten so comfortable just owning all of the accountability for everything that I make. Like I say, if it's good or bad, it's all on me. The wins, the losses, like, I can own them. And I'm very comfortable owning my own losses, because I know that that's just like necessary for me to figure out how to get better and to grow and to improve. And I'm comfortable with that for myself. But it's like when I'm bringing other people in, then it's like, oh no, like, what if I do something that they don't think is dope? Or what if we make something and it doesn't do well and people don't get it? And then, we have to sort of like share in that loss together. I'm starting to realize that I think that's a piece of this. And I'm also realizing that I think for me to break through to the next level, collaboration is going to be a huge, huge part of it. And so this is just another one of those sort of like growth opportunities for me, and things that I'm seeing for myself, where it's like, this is what it's going to take for me to get better, is to, push past some of these insecurities and face some of these fears head on, and start reaching out to more people and bringing more people into my creativity and my art,